help section will help you with that. What I'm going to be doing today is a little bit different. I'm going to show you guys why you've heard a lot about us, right? Because anybody can pull a list. We can all go to the county's office and just grab a list. Nothing different there. But what has made us very popular is what I'm going to be showing you guys today. So with that said, let me get my screen over to you guys now. And here we go. So let me maximize that. And once it's up and running, we're going to go ahead and get started on that. So before I explain further about the benefits that we have to offer, and again, our data is nationwide, so you guys can do what I'm about to show you anywhere in the United States. But before we dive into that, let me explain something to you guys from a perspective that I've always looked at it, right? Because I've been dealing with data for many, many, many years. I've talked to brokers, lenders, wholesalers, fix and flippers, people that do subject twos, people that do lease options. I talk to them, and so I understand most of their strategies and the angles that they take. And I finally was able to create a graph that I believe will explain everything. Hopefully you guys will be able to understand it as well. So here's a very rough graph that I drew, and I will explain to you what it's representing. So the way that I've always looked at property is that there's a timeline, right? When a person owns the property, when they buy it the first time, they're in the low motivation stage, right? Everybody starts here, right? And there are some categories that we have that are low motivated categories, such as cash buyers, high equity, again, someone that just bought a house last month. These are your low motivation leads. There's no reason why someone who just bought a house last week, or someone who bought a house in cash, or someone who's sitting on a lot of equity to just sell you their house, right? This is why you don't see many wholesalers trying to call cash buyers for discounted properties. You're calling cash buyers to unload your properties to them, not calling them to get discounts on the properties they just bought in cash. I mean, let's think about that, right? If I bought a house in cash for $100,000 and then you come knocking on my door and say, hey, I want that house you just bought for $60,000. Unless I'm a fool, yeah, then I'll take your offer and then lose $40,000 and think nothing of it, right? But that's never going to happen. So note that, guys. So the way that I always look at it is everyone starts here. And if you are looking for leads here, the reality is there's going to be probably no discounts. If you do find a lead here, it's going to probably be slower because there's no motivation to get that homeowner to want to sell as soon as possible, right? And clearly there's no competition here. So you can spend all day here and no other competitors, no other wholesalers or fix and flippers are going to be here because, again, the motivation to these homeowners are very, very low. But then as we increase in the motivation scale, the reason why motivation increases is because something happens. This is what I personally coined the uh-oh situation, right? So everyone starts here, we're good. And then you get into the uh-oh situation. And this is when a bankruptcy is filed, a divorce happens, a lien is filed, you're vacant, meaning you're not answering your mail, or maybe you've been renting out your house for 10 years. So this is the uh-oh stage, right? This is important to know because this uh-oh stage is what really leads into the pre-foreclosure, right? And now there's nothing wrong with pre-foreclosure. As a matter of fact, I know most of us here I've been told, go look for pre-foreclosures, go look for auctions. And the reason we're told that is because this is the audience that needs the most help, right? Your pre-foreclosures, your auctions. And then depending on if your state is a redemption state, you can look for pre or foreclosures. Reason why we're instructed to look at this area is because you get big discounts, right? You're going to get people that are willing to give you their property for what they owe and not what the property is really worth after repair value. You're going to get faster closing because you've got to close fast. You have like 30 days before the auction or 2 weeks before the auction. But unfortunately, it's also very competitive because remember, you guys have all been told to look in this area, right? So our system, and it's, again, this is because we've learned in the 15 years, is that every one of you guys has your own little niche, right? Some of you guys only want high motivated categories. So some of you guys are only going to focus on the foreclosures and auctions and pre-foreclosures. And if that's the case, when you're in PropStream using our platform, you'll be able to search anywhere in the market. So I can go to, let's say, Fulton County, Georgia, right? Or like Dallas County, Georgia, or Dallas County, Texas. But in this case, Fulton County, Georgia. And if I'm an individual who's solely focusing on the high motivation category, these guys over here on the right-hand side, then what I'm doing is I'm going to refine that category only, right? So I'm going to search for Fulton County. I'm going to go through the pre-foreclosures, and then I'm going to go to the filter and say, okay, I want an owner-occupied pre-foreclosure, and my buyers prefer single family, and they prefer a certain year built or bedrooms or bathrooms. So you get to add layers to the pre-foreclosures that you really, really want. Then when you're done with that, you get to then start stacking. And this is where we can drive more motivation, right? So as I showed you guys on the graph, pre-foreclosure is really right here, right? When you get the pre-foreclosure notice, you're right here, but there are other motivational drivers. So not only are you in pre-foreclosure, but what if you're in pre-foreclosure and you listed your house and it failed, right? That's an extra layer of motivation for us, right? Not only is this person on pre-foreclosure, but they called an agent and they said, hey, I'd like to sell my house. And the agent tried to sell their house and it failed. So these are my 48 homeowners that have one less option to utilize, and that's calling an agent to list their property. So now they're only left with really 3 options, right? Sell your house on your own, take my offer, actually 4 options: sell your house on your own, take my offer, foreclose your property, or pay your debt off, right? So one less option. The 5th option would have been call your agent and sell your property, but our system will allow you to look for those unique situations. So in this case, pre-foreclosures that failed on the MLS, or for some of you guys, because I've seen people get creative, they're like, well, why do we need to wait till it failed? Why don't we look for an active listing that's been on the market for 180 days, 6 months? It's about to fail. So rather than waiting for them to fail, we can start calling now, because in 30 days when it fails, we've already built that relationship with them, right? So our system will allow you to really build layers or come up with unique situations to where you can say, you know what? I don't need to wait for a failed listing. I can call them on the 6-month mark, or I can call them on the 5-month mark, 30 days before it fails. So that way I don't have to wait or be the last. You guys got to start thinking outside of the box, right? There's competition everywhere. So you guys got to start coming up with these unique angles. And this is 2 angles that you can take: a pre-foreclosure that failed, or a pre-foreclosure that's active on the market for, in this case, 5 months or more, to the point where it's about to expire. Now, most of us, what we've been taught is MLS off, on market, no, right? We want a pre-foreclosure that's not on market. And there's nothing wrong with that. I still encourage you to do that, but I just showed you guys 2 other strategies on how you can separate yourself from the competition. So think of that for a moment there. And once you're done layering your MLS status, you now can refine your foreclosure status, right? So now, since we're looking for a highly motivated category, what I want now is the most recent, or something that's going to give me enough time to work with. So if I'm looking for the most recent recording, I'm looking for a pre-foreclosure that was perhaps recorded at the beginning of this month. Now, if you guys don't apply a listing date, what's going to end up happening is we keep our records for 6 months. So some of you guys are wondering, well, why would you want to keep records for 6 months? They're not for you. That's the thing. Remember, I told you we deal with brokers, agents, lenders, wholesalers, fix and flippers. So for most of us, if we're wholesaling, we don't want records 30 days or older, right? So this is why we give you the control to apply a listing date. Or for what I normally do is I say, hey, me and my team, we need about 3 weeks to close a deal. So show me all the pre-foreclosures that have an auction starting November 4th or later. So now we go through all the pre-foreclosure and we say, hey, Burton, there are 69 of them. They're going to get auctioned November 4th or later. So now me and my team have a good solid 3 to 4 weeks to work on this lead, right? Again, if you guys don't filter for this stuff, you're going to end up looking at old records. And again, we do that deliberately because they may not be for you. They may be for a lender who doesn't care about the home. They care about the person who's going through a financial situation. And this is where data has become very powerful, is because in the past, when we first started, we were only caretaking to a given audience. And then we realized, hey, anybody can use this data. And it's just a matter of how you filter your layers. So with this search, we're now looking for the hottest list now. We're looking for pre-foreclosures that are off market and they're about to be auctioned 3 weeks from now or later. And then we can drive some motivation by saying, hey, we want this to be an individual, not a corporate office, because corporations have more options, or they're smarter, or they play hardball. a little bit. So I'm looking for just a regular person who happened to be in a tough situation, right? And so once I choose individual, I can even do years of ownership. Or maybe I'm looking for a non-owner occupied property, right? So here are my non-owner occupied properties that are in pre-foreclosure. So could you imagine being a homeowner, but of a second property, and that second property now is about to get defaulted on? That's a headache. And here are the 7 people that that's happening to. We can even add more layers and say, well, what if not only do they not own that property or they're not occupying that property, what if that owner is out of state, right? Imagine now living in a whole different state, owning a property in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's about to go into foreclosure. You are going to want to save that property. But the problem is you're in a whole different state. So you got to travel or you got to start making phone calls to get that problem solved, right? Or I call you because I found you now. Here are the 2 leads that are out of state with pre-foreclosures. I can call you and say, hey, would you be willing to just sell me if I give you the right price? And again, you guys got to start thinking outside the box. It's no longer just one category, guys. It's one category with all sorts of angles that you can take to drive that motivation higher or drive it lower, depending on if you're trying to stay away from competition or you're trying to find someone who's just in a heap of a mess, right? So in this example, pre-foreclosures that are non-owner occupied with an out-of-state owner registered, right? In this case, we get 2 results. Just be very careful. The more layers that you apply, the narrower and narrow you're going to get. And remember, this is a numbers game, guys. So you don't want to always put your eggs in 2 properties. You got to make sure you get as many leads as possible. I always go by the 10% rule. If you send 1,000 postcards, 10 people are going to call you back. Of the 10 people, 1 of them will close the deal. That's just the rule I've always gone by, whether it's in this industry or the next industry. So just, again, if you're getting too specific and you get 2 results, you may find a very motivated person, but that doesn't mean that, you know, the first call you make, they're going to say yes. You might call these 2 people and they say no to you, and then what? You have no more leads to attack. So you got to start getting creative and start finding different angles. So we'll go back to owner occupied and we'll deselect out-of-state owners. So back to 69. And then the last thing we can do is we can add more layers. So not only is this person in pre-foreclosure, but this person has also filed for bankruptcy. And the way I like to think of it is, in order to get out of pre-foreclosure, you have to pay that default amount, right? But if you're in bankruptcy, then there's no income. So you can't pay your default amount. You're in bigger trouble now. These are the 18 people that, in my mind, won't be able to pay their default because they also have a bankruptcy recorded. And again, if you have a bankruptcy recorded, it's because you have no income coming in anymore. So an even more motivated list. Pre-foreclosure, well, this one's a little bit higher because there's a bankruptcy also recorded to it. So the motivation went higher here, and that may be a benefit to me, okay? So once we add bankruptcy or a divorce or a lien, your choice there if you want to keep driving motivation. After that, you have the value trend. So you'll be able to say, okay, I want properties that are between 100,000 to 200,000 max, or I want a property that's going to rent out for 2,500, or I want a property that's grown 5% over the last year or certain period of time over the last year. And then last but not least, I want equity on the property, right? So we can say I want a property with $50,000 in equity minimum or 50% in equity minimum, or maybe a property that has 4 mortgages, or a property that has a huge mortgage amount or a low mortgage amount, property that has a high interest or low interest rate, high or low loan of value. There's all sorts of angles that you guys can take to drive that motivation. But in this example, what I've done is owner-occupied pre-foreclosures that are off-market. They're going to get auctioned in about 3 weeks. It's owned by an individual, and it has 50% or more in equity. Now, when I hit apply, I have my solid 23 leads. What also is going to be beneficial to you guys is the ability to not only be able to control, manipulate your searches and find the ones that are highly motivated, but then another thing that we've excelled in is just the amount of details that we provide you. When you click on a property, guys, we're giving you like 7 different sources side by side. So you have county records. I know David owns the property. I have his property characteristics, his site information, the county records. So David bought this property back in 2000 for $104, but David actually used a mortgage of $95,000 at an 8% interest rate. It's a 30-year fix. And that information that you see here is what most providers don't go for. It's extra money. We have to pay for this information, right? It's easy to just go from the county records and say, okay, well, 100,000, let's reverse from there, right? Let's make the payments. But that's not the case, because when you make a down payment, what happens to the down payment? It goes straight into the equity of the property. So if we're reverse calculating from this amount, we're already 10,000 above where the equity could be, right? You're taking away from the equity if you're calculating from the wrong variables. So this is why we pay extra to get the title information and the interest rate. So that way we can get you a better idea of where the property is valued at, or where the balance is left at. We also pay attention to any transactions that are happening on that property. So here in the mortgage information, it says, hey, David bought the property back in 95 or back in 2000 for $95,000, but David refinanced 3 years later with Wells Fargo, and the loan amount at that time was $92,000. So the balance has changed, right? 3 years later at a higher amount, you reset. You're now we're reverse calculating from that amount. And again, this is what other aggregators don't hunt down. So you might get caught off guard. You might think, oh, well, they've been making payments since 2000, so their balance is actually at 30,000 today, right? And then you call the owner, and the owner goes, no, we refinanced it in 03. Our balance is actually $60,000. Now you're like, oh, crap, that ruins my calculation. Now it might be more than my maximum allowable offer, or now it might be in a range where I can't even wholesale it anymore, right? So this is why we, for the last 15 years, we're not just looking for county records. We're looking for anything that's out there that has information on that property. Title companies, mortgage companies, attorneys, lenders, county, brokers, so that way you guys can understand the story that's unfolding without calling the owner. In this case, I don't need to call the owner to know that their balance is pretty low. So I have that information and property details. And then the next step is, what is holding the title down? Right now, it's the pre-foreclosure. So there's a notice of default. Auction will be in the first week of February. So I have about 2-3 weeks to work with this owner. So prior to calling the owner, I'm going to run comparables on it. I want to know what this property is worth. And in order to run comps, you're going to be able to use 3 sources. No one's going to do it for you. I'm just going to tell you that right now. This is not something that is going to be handed down to you. This is not something that you're going to click on. It says, here's the ARV. Guys, that's not how it works. It's not. If you guys expect no footwork when doing stuff, then you're probably, your expectations are way too high. You got to lower it down. What we do is we just give you the data. It's your job to look for apples to apples, right? You're a lawyer trying to convince your family member that they're guilty. You can't just convince people by using words. You're going to have to use evidence, right? You could be the greatest speaker in the world, but in the court, in the justice system, it's all about evidence. Same thing when you're dealing with investors. You can't just say, hey, Mr. Investor, I believe the ARV is $500,000. A smart investor is going to say, show me the comps. And if you don't have comps, you're screwed, right? So what we do is we give you the data. You can use county records. So you can say, okay, I want to look at just county sales. I want the sales in the last year that are 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, and then your filters will settle down. Next thing you want to do is go through them and make sure you see anything that's standing out, take them out. This 1 million one is out of the picture. This 4-bedroom one is too high. That's out of the picture. So we're down to these 2. Now, 2 comps, not so good. So I can go ahead and increase the distance. Let's go to a mile and get as many as I can, right? Now, I don't know this market. I'm not in Georgia. Maybe a mile is too much, right? Because I'm in Southern California. We don't even go a mile. We actually do a 1/4 mile in my neighborhood, because even a 1/2 mile is too long or too big of a radius. So given the market, you can increase or decrease the radius. And again, if you increase or decrease, you'll get more results. Just make sure you're going through the values and you're deselecting anything that's outrageous, right? So here's one that's very too low. And you guys are probably wondering, what are those green ones? Those green ones are cash buyers. These are properties that were bought in cash. Now, they're a double-edged sword. So let me explain what I mean by that. Sometimes they're going to take away from your comp. Like this one is this buyer most likely bought several properties. Actually, I can go to the details and do that. But this cash buyer probably bought like 20 addresses at once, and so the sell amount is $1.1 million for all 20 addresses. So that is absolutely bad for my comps, because if I click on that, you see this 149 here? If I click on that, it dramatically changes. So I need to deselect that. But here's the double-edged sword. These green ones, they may be bad for comps, but they're good to know who they are. So what I always do is anytime I see a green one, I always deselect them, but I'll go to the details so I can see who the buyer is. I want to know who's buying in this area. So I went from, I need to run comps to, oh, here's a buyer. Let me know who that buyer is. And so the way that my mind works is it goes in different directions. So if I see something like this, I'll be like, oh, that's bad for comps, but let me go to the details to see who that buyer is. And so I'll get my notepad and I'll write down the buyer's name and their address. And then I'll go back and I'll run my comps again. And I'll say, okay, we're back to running comps, except this time I don't need that person. But if this property ends up signing a contract with me, well, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buyers already in the area. So I don't even need to market to the entire zip code. These are the 6 people I need to market to. And all I have to do is click on their name, go to the details, and I now know who they are. So this is the first box, county records, and we're going to show you the ones that were bought in cash for you to either use for comps or for you to find out who the buyers are. We then show you your neighboring records. So you might be in a gated community. You might be dealing with a property built in 1920. So we want to show you what your neighbors are selling for. Some cases you might not have records, or again, you're in a country club, and so all the single family properties outside of the gate are 50% less than what's inside the community, right? So using neighbors could be very beneficial to you. And last but certainly not least, MLS records. So this is what agents usually use when running comps. They'll use both county and MLS listings. The reason why they use MLS listings is because you guys don't have access to it. And what's really important about MLS records is that the data frequency comes faster than the county. So if I'm an agent and I sell a property today, I'm going to run back to my office, and on the MLS, I'm going to say it's sold and it's sold for this amount. Now, once that is sold, I have to take that paperwork, get it to the title company, title gets it to the county. That whole process can take 3 weeks or longer. So this is why agents like running comps, because if you go to the comp section, the most recent record could be from June, as you guys see here, right? So this county is about almost 4 months behind in pushing out records. That's something that is out of our control. This, you guys have experienced it. I know some of you guys have experienced your county taking long to record things. That is out of our control, but this is why we went in and tapped into the MLS on a nationwide level. So that way we can give you guys comps that are not 4 months old. You can say, okay, I want all the sold listings in the last 90 days. And then here you go. Here are the listings that sold in July that the county hasn't even recorded in this category yet. So now I'm able to see what this 3 one-bedroom sold, and it sold for $125. And guess what? My property has an extra bedroom and it has more square footage. So I know right now my property is instantly worth more than $125,000. See, that's how this system works. Nothing's going to be given to you. So you got to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. And when you find your leads, you can check them off. You can save them, or what I do, when I'm in the MLS box and I find a good comp, I'll click on it, go to the details of that comp, and then I'll just hit that print button at the top. Because I'm trying to give evidence. So I'll go to the MLS property, hit the print button, and now I have my detailed report. This is what I'm handing an investor. I'm saying, hey, look, I found a property. I found 4 MLS comps, and here are the here's the first printout of that first one that sold, and here's what it sold for in July. So this part right here is what I'm highlighting. So I'm, again, using evidence to convince I'm not just spouting out numbers. I'm saying, hey, this property is worth this much based on this property that sold on the MLS. And then I'll even show them the county records. I'll say, hey, you know what? I ran comps and I found these 10, for example, and I'm going to hit view report. And that report will give you a high-low with the county. It'll say, hey, based on the county comps, here's the low amount, here's the high amount, and here's the average. Now, again, the low amount will be dramatically different because this is the part where you guys got to go through here and make sure you're deselecting the ones that have very low values. So if you see anything too low, Like see, these cash buyers are coming up on some really crazy deals. Like this market is ranging at 100 plus. And look at these buyers. They're buying it for 36. They're buying it for 68. They're buying it for, you know what they're going to do. They're going to buy it low, rehab it, and flip it high. So they're bad for comps. But again, you definitely want to click on them and go to their details. You want to know who's doing that so you can flip that property even faster. So once I have my 5 selected, I'll hit view report. And now the ARV range is much better. Okay, so this property, if you sold it with minimum rehab 101, if you sold it with the best possible rehab 190, and the average is usually around 130 for this property. That's how we run comps on our platform. We don't do it for you. We give you the data so you can extract it, take these PDF files, and convince your buyer or your seller that this is what the property is valued at. Okay, guys? So just wanted to show you guys that part because that ties in with finding your leads. You need to be able to filter your leads to get to this part here where you can analyze what's going on with that property. And then once you know, hey, it's in pre-foreclosure, I can then run comps using county, neighbor, or MLS. We give you access to tax information, mortgage information, transaction history, and documents. And you guys know how to read this, so I'm not going to go into details over that. My main focus today was to show you the filtering and explain to you guys that you don't have to be in this category only. What I just did right now was strictly focused on people that are in this very high motivated category. So when I'm filtering for people in this category, my point of contact starts here, right? And if I'm looking for pre-foreclosures, I'm pretty much making contact here when they're in pre-foreclosure. And guess what? I'm not the only one. All of you guys are at too, right? So big discounts, faster closing, yes. Very competitive, absolutely yes. So the way that I've always looked at it is, well, if they're in pre-foreclosure, then how did they get into pre-foreclosure? And why are we waiting for them to be in pre-foreclosure? Why don't we try to find them here? And our system will allow you to do that. And in this example I'm going to show you guys is I'm going to suppress data. So I'm going to go into Miami or Fulton County, the same market, except being that I know pre-foreclosures are very competitive, I'm going to suppress that. So I'm going to look for all the owner occupied liens that are single family, off market or failed or whatever layer you want to add, in this case off market. But now I'm going to say that they're not in pre-foreclosure at all. I want to make sure I'm staying away from all of you guys that are competing against with me. So these are my liens that are not on the market, not in pre-foreclosure. They're owned by an individual. And here's the motivation driver, right? If I'm looking at these liens right now, here's one that can pay it off next week when they get paid. That's not motivation at all. But if I go here and say, okay, I want all the liens that are $15,000 minimum to $50,000 max, that's my motivation, guys, right? Because if they can't pay that lien off, if they can't pay that $50,000 lien, they're over here, right? If you can't pay that lien off, that lien will cause a foreclosure, and then you're over here, right? So the idea that I'm trying to show you guys is that we don't have to wait till they're in pre-foreclosure. We can suppress this category and just look for people that have a lien that are not yet in pre-foreclosure. And that's what I'm doing here, guys. I have 1,400 leads that I can attack. And while you guys are waiting for pre-foreclosures, I might be able to get to these guys way before they get that pre-foreclosure record. As a matter of fact, you might never even see them in pre-foreclosure because I'm closing deals before they even get there. And that was the whole idea of this filtering system, to be able to create whatever level of motivation that you're in. So in this case, they're not highly motivated, but they're in that stage of getting there, right? In this case, the lien is very high. And then I'm going to wrap it up by saying, hey, I'd like the property to have also 50% in equity. And so here's my point that I'm bringing across, right? Most of the competition is here. And this is where everybody's focusing on, because again, big discounts, faster closing, but it's very competitive. But I will be very honest with you guys. If you guys think calling someone here and you're going to get that first deal on the first phone call, they're going to sell the first time you talk to them, you're in for a surprise. As a matter of fact, when people are here, they were saying that the average postcard amount that a person in pre-foreclosure gets. So when a person is in pre-foreclosure, they were doing a survey, and they were saying that the average person in pre-foreclosure gets about 200 postcards every week from the moment that that pre-foreclosure is released publicly. So when an address is in pre-foreclosure in your market, there's 200 other investors aiming for that property as well. If you're the one that gets that call back out of the 200, guess what? You got a big discount. You're going to close it fast, but it's very competitive. Don't expect that if you're just focusing on pre-foreclosure that the time that that owner picks up the phone, they're going to want to deal with you. Because remember, not only have they been in pre-foreclosure, but they're probably annoyed by the amount of postcards and voicemails that they're getting. So just because you got a hold of them, that deal may not go through because all the other people have been annoying the heck out of them, right? So the idea that I'm showing is that by suppressing this category, I'm over here getting a hold of them here, right? Now, again, they're not as motivated. Let's bring that point across. They're not as motivated when they're in this category, and I understand that, right? That's why marketing is important, because when I make contact here, they're going to say no to me, right? They're in denial. Reality hasn't set in. They probably think they can afford or pay off their situation or figure it out themselves, and that's perfectly understandable because we all do that. I do that every time I'm in trouble. I feel like I can do it until I end up calling a parent or a friend and saying, hey, bail me out, right? I'm in trouble. So when you call these liens, remember, they're not as motivated, right? They're not going to close fast. Don't expect that. But the idea here is to introduce ourselves and make contact. So the first time we call, they're going to say no. 2 weeks later, we send a postcard or we call, they're still going to say no. 3 weeks later, they might know our name now. We might start talking about what's going on, right? So now we're building that rapport. And by the fourth time we reached out, this is, I think, where it gets really hot, because now we should know whether their situation is going to get resolved by the owner or if they're heading in pre-foreclosure. This is also the point where the owner knows whether they're going to take care of their situation or if they're going to get closer to pre-foreclosure. So the idea here is, while everybody is waiting for this moment in time, you can be over here building that rapport and closing it here way before they get into pre-foreclosure. And that's what I wanted to show you guys today. Again, I wasn't going to spend time on showing you how the functionalities of platform. I firmly believe you guys have seen enough about PropStream on how to use it, how to approach it. I think what a lot of people aren't exposed to is that this industry is changing in a sense that 10 years ago, we only had one list to pull and we would all go after that one list. Now you're able to layer and build more motivation or take away layers, so you're staying away from the high motivated, very competitive areas. So again, while you guys are calling pre-foreclosures and waiting at the courthouse for a pre-foreclosure recording, I'm calling the bankruptcies, I'm calling the liens, I'm calling the vacants that I believe are heading into pre-foreclosure that are not there yet. So I wanted to show you guys that. You also can create things in our system. Like, you guys are probably wondering, what's a tired landlord and how do you do that? I went through your filters and I don't see a tired landlords filter. A tired landlord is something that you would have to come up with on your own, right? If you think like a landlord, then you will be able to find a landlord. And so if I think like a landlord, first thing is I'm not living in the property I'm renting out, right? So if I wanted to go to Fulton County and find tired landlords, first thing I want to do is find non-owner occupied properties. Now, if I'm trying to find tired landlords to flip their properties or buy their properties, I want these tired landlords to have high equity. So non-owner occupied properties with a lot of equity. I want the property single family. I want the property off market. I want the property not in pre-foreclosure, so I'm not dealing with competition. And here's where the tired landlord comes into play. I want the owner to have owned this property for 20 years, and it's an individual. So let's think about that. So an individual has been owning this house, these guys over here on the right-hand side. So these 686 properties have been owned by an individual for 20 years. And it's been non-owner occupied. So they've been most likely renting out their house for the past 20 years, right? Now, being that they're not a corporation, they probably don't even know how to start a corporation. All they know is, hey, I have a house and it's cash flowing. They may not have a plan B when the bad stuff happens, right? Death, illness, or whatever. So while you guys, again, are looking for pre-foreclosures or perhaps the bankruptcies that I just showed you how to look for, I'm also looking for tired landlords. Because one of these guys may say, you know what, I'm 70, I'm 80, I don't have any kids, I don't know what to do with my properties. And now one property turned into 5 properties that I didn't know about. So you guys are going to be able to come up with some unique categories if you think of a predicament. And the predicament here is that you've owned your property for 20 years, you've never lived in it. And we can also add a predicament by saying that the property is built in the year 2000 or before. So now we're talking about major upgrades, right? You got to do the roof, plumbing, HVAC. If you're in California, they're going to force you to do solar panels. So again, there are other categories that you can find that doesn't have to be a given category. It doesn't have to be pre-foreclosure. It doesn't have to be bankruptcies. I just found 600 potential leads because I'm just looking for people that I would consider tired of being a landlord. I mean, could you imagine renting your house out for 20 years? 20 years of tenants, 20 years of some of the tenants destroying your windows or not taking care of the property. So yeah, I'm going to leave that off. I'm going to leave you guys with that. Again, I want to thank you guys for the time. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on all the other features like the skip tracing that you can do, the ringless voicemails and emails. If you guys want more information on that, go to our help tab, or you can type, PropStream on YouTube, and there's an overview video on that. My main goal today was to show you guys that our system is not just for giving you property details. It's not just for running comps. It's not just for looking at one category. It's for designing or creating your own level of motivation. So if you guys need more help, here's our phone number at the top, our video tutorials in the help section, and our email. But I'm going to wrap it up with that. I'm going to leave you guys off with that. I hope you guys saw some value into some of the leads that you can find that others aren't looking for. And I hope you guys are able to take those filters I showed you and start looking in your market. Or if you're a virtual wholesaler, again, we're nationwide data. So you can take these filters I just showed you and go in any market in the United States. But with that said, guys, my name is Burton. I'm with PropStream. You guys can find me on Instagram if you want. It's Keep Calm Bert's on. You can find me on Facebook if you want. But we're always here to help, guys. Anytime you need help, just call in. What we can't help you with is the investor strategy. Again, we deal with lenders, brokers, agents. Every one of you guys have your own angle. The filtering is going to help you control that motivation, whether you want high motivation, low motivation, mid motivation, or a cash buyer. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoy your evening. Thank you so much for your time. I know most of us didn't want to be here, but I hope that you see value in why you were here. And yeah, we'll go from there. Again, this is recorded. I'll send that over to Antoine, and he's gonna when he's done editing it, he should be able to post that up to you guys. Okay, so if you guys have any questions, let me just cut this recording now, and let me answer some questions that you guys have, if you have any. Anybody have any questions? If not, you guys can go ahead and start trickling out. Yeah, you're welcome, Erica. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It means a lot. Yeah, I mean, I'm just really here to show you guys that there's just more than just pre-foreclosures. I mean, there's just technology and just being able to manipulate your data. That's something that we've been aiming for. I mean, we've been around for 15 years. There's a lot of data providers out there. I mean, I don't ever throw anybody under the bus. I think getting as much data as possible is a good thing. But again, you can have as much data as you want. If you're not able to manipulate it, I think that's where the trouble comes up, because now you're marketing to the same audiences that other people are audiences. And I think in this industry, you're going to want to find those little criteria that people aren't looking for. Not yet. I wish it was in Puerto Rico. Not yet, Lorraine. Just United States right now. Investor reports. Well, the investor reports, any report that you print in our system is a PDF file, so you can export that and get that. You can pretty much, it's yours. Once you hit the export button or the print button, that PDF file is yours. Do what you want. If you want to edit it, go from it. Probate leads. The answer is no for now. So I'll leave it at that. But look out for that. We have some big updates coming out very, very soon. So answer to probates, we don't have it yet. You're very welcome for the information. Learned so much about filtering, layering, and suppressing data. I'm very happy you learned that, because I think that's what's going to help you find leads that others aren't looking for. How do you get criteria for rural areas? There's really, I mean, it could be anything. If it's a rural area, you're probably going to want to look for, like, if you're in a rural area and we don't have pre-foreclosures, you might want to start looking for people that have owned a property in a rural area for 10 years or more. Maybe it's non-owner occupied, or maybe it's an out-of-state owner that owns a lot in a rural area, right? Maybe they've been sitting on it for 10 years, hoping for it to grow in value when it never did. And so you might be able to get that lock. How did I look up for tired landlords? I just did non-owner occupied, and I put a minimum years of ownership. So I did non-owner occupied, individually owned, and then I did 10 years. Oh, in this example, I did 20 years. 20 years of minimum ownership. So the more years, the bigger, right? I mean, they can. I don't see someone owning a property for 50 years and doing it as an individual. I mean, I don't even think you'll find any records that have 50 years of ownership there. But the idea is you want to find that given time frame, that year, whether it's 7 years, whether it's 10 years. I mean, again, every investor has their own little golden number. The idea is you want to put the amount of years that you believe an owner would be like, all right, I'm tired of doing this, right? I'm tired of dealing with tenants. I'm tired of rehabbing my property every time someone moves out. I'm tired of the grass being destroyed and the landscape being destroyed. I mean, you know your market, so you'll know what the best time frame is. How long does PropStream keep info again? Well, with the pre-foreclosures, we keep those for 6 months. So you want to make sure you filter the pre-foreclosures by choosing a listing date or by applying an auction date. I'm stuck on a land deal with the program. Show stuff like utility hookup ready. It may. When you search the property, go to the site information, property characteristics. If the county provided it, we will have it. If not, it will not show. Can I talk about the ringless voicemail feature? Lorraine, I'd like to, but I'm limited on time. I have to hit the road soon. But if you actually go to the help tab on the far left side and look at our overview video, it's about an hour long, but if you fast forward it to about 50 minutes, it will start talking about the marketing section for you, how to set up your website, postcards, voicemails, and emails. But ultimately, the ringless voicemail, you build the list, you skip trace it to get their phone numbers, and then we'll send the ringless voicemails to that list that you build. Are the auction dates accurate for pre-foreclosures? Yes and no. There is a term called postponements. We don't collect those. So when the county records an auction date, let's say November 1st, if the trustee or whatever gets postponed, that doesn't usually get re-recorded at the county. That's an internal document that the notice of trustee has. So we don't know if a property has been auctioned off. Best rule of thumb I would always say is if you're looking at a property and the auction was like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, don't just ignore it. The trustee's phone number is in the details. Call them and just ask, hey, was it delayed? If it was delayed till the next month, boom, you're good, right? I mean, now you know I can still work on this property while others that didn't want to make that extra phone call have ignored that lead. So you might find yourself getting that lead because everyone thought the auction date has passed. So we do not collect postponements. When does PropStream update pre-foreclosures and lien information? Well, we update our platform's records every day, but the problem is that no two counties have the same frequency. So some counties will update every day with us. Some will send their records on like Friday afternoon. Some will send it every month. There's really no measurement to it. The rule of thumb is the higher the population, the more frequent we get the data, because just there's enough manpower, there's enough taxes in the state for them to pay people to get those records out there. If we're dealing with a very low populated area, records could take longer because we actually have to send someone out there, because some of these areas are still on paper format. Like, I kid you not, we have to send someone out there and they pull per record. So it'll be like 25 cents per record. So the challenge is if we're in an area with there's like 5,000 people in that populated or in that city, and there's only 5 records to pull, we're not going to send a guy to get 5 records for 25 cents a pop. I mean, that's $1.25 that they're going to get paid, and they're having to fly and drive to that area. What they normally do is they'll wait till like the end of the month until the pile is big enough to justify that they're going out there and getting paid for it. Otherwise, if the frequency or the volume is very low, let's say we're in an area 500 people, and the last property that was bought was like 2 years ago, that's probably a market we're not going to get any listings in, because it's not going to be lucrative for us to send someone out there and get that information to us. No, we don't have a bad credit filter. Will we add it? I don't think so. That's information that typically is hard to get because you have to tap into the credit bureau and the 3 credit agencies. Divorce is in the filter, Tony. I won't be going through it because I'm running out on time. I'm actually going to sign off in about 4 minutes. Where do I see the real estate market headed over the next 6 months? Up and down, up and down. It's always going to go up, it's going to go down, and then it goes back up again. So if it ever goes down, you're going to get a lot of deals. Our pre-foreclosures and liens and bankruptcy records will increase, so you guys are going to get a lot more leads. But I'm not looking forward to it. I hate seeing people in misery. We went through it. I went through it personally with my stepfather and mother back in 2008. We lost our home. That's how I was indirectly exposed to wholesaling. People were knocking on our doors trying to get the property through a short sale because of the recession. So I'm not for the industry or the housing market going down, but it's inevitable. It always goes up, it always goes down, and it goes back up again. So are there pros and cons? Absolutely. Oh, I agree, Eddie. Yeah, the day we add probates, I agree. It will be a game changer. But again, if you get the list of probates, don't wait for us. Just type in the address. Remember, you can search the address. So if I have like 10 addresses on a probate list, I'll type those 10 addresses in the search bar and get their equity right then and there. I mean, the probate information's on a paper. So all I need to know is who owns it, where their mailing address is, what they owe, and then to run the comp. So we may be able to help you qualify the probate list that you're able to get that we don't have. Yeah, Aaron, you can search up to 5 zip codes at once. Just separate them in commas. RVM cost, Grace, I'm sorry for not answering you. RVM cost is 10 cents per successful delivery. Yeah, so if the voicemail is delivered, so if let's say I call you on an RVM, but your voicemail is not set up, you're going to get my missed call, but we're never, since the voicemail didn't go through, a user doesn't get charged for that. So we can call 100 numbers, but if only 80 voicemails go through, $8 is what we charge you. We don't charge you the $10. Yeah, you can. Gene, that's in the contacts page. If you go to the contacts page, there's an import button at the top right. You can import a list of addresses into our system, but we will not give you the details. Not yet. Something that you should look out for in the future. But anything you import in our system, we treat separately. We don't connect. So if you import, we don't connect our details to it. Simple as that. So you're only importing into our system because you're going to skip trace it and mark it to it. If you import and you expect us to give you our details, that is not going to happen. All right. All right, guys. Well, with that said, it's been a huge pleasure. You guys make sure you guys thank Antoine for this event. He hosted it. He set this all up. I'm going to get this recording over to him. Hopefully, we'll have that up and running in the next 24 to 48 hours. You guys have been great. Make sure you guys, if you sign up, he has a sign-up link. I hooked him up with one. You guys get his price of $97 a month. You'll get 10,000 leads. That's about a penny a lead at that point. So make sure you use them all. And I showed you guys some amazing filters. So if you're just doing pre-foreclosures, yeah, you're never going to hit 10,000 leads. But if you start doing tired landlords and bankruptcies that are not in pre-foreclosures or liens that are not in pre-foreclosures, you should definitely have more than enough at that point. Okay, guys? So make sure you guys go to his Facebook page, show him some love. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. Other than that, you guys enjoy your evening. All right, guys? Take it easy. Yeah, you can actually, Erica, if you email us, email our support line and say, hey, I want to get the Antoine's discount. We'll take care of that for you. Okay. All right. You guys are blessed. Thank you so much. Stay happy property hunting. You guys got this. Stay consistent. Remember, get used to hearing no's, but start early. Don't wait for the last minute. And remember, you guys have worked in sales before. I don't have to tell you that most of the deals are closed because of follow-up. If you ever think, if you're in this industry thinking you're going to get deals on the first phone call, reality is going to set hard in for you, really hard. So make sure you guys are getting used to follow up, and that's why we have the marketing there for you guys. Okay, guys. So with that said, my name is Burton. You guys have a wonderful night. It's been a huge pleasure. Take care.